Hey you, welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
I'm husband.
I'm wife.
And together we're reading the Bible.
Starting with Genesis and eventually ending with Revelations, we're working through every book and offering our atheist 2 cents.
Or shekels.
Yeah, those. We're asking questions and pointing out all the nonsense.
We aren't academics or scholars.
Nope. In fact, when it comes to religion, we really don't know anything at all.
What we've learned so far is that God's a dick.
Oh, he really is, isn't he? If you're interested in how we reached this startling conclusion, maybe start from episode 1.
Otherwise, jump in anywhere. It's all good.
Yep.
Hey wife, we just got a new sponsor. It's Anchor. They must think we're doing something right because they picked us back up.
That's amazing. Want to hear something even more amazing?
Yeah?
I actually know what they are.
You are full of shit. I'm calling your bluff. Tell me about Anchor.
Okay, so Anchor by Spotify is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place.
I'm actually surprised you knew that, but did you also know that Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer?
Yes, because I see you do that on your phone all the time and it looks pretty simple.
It really is, and when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
But I use CastBox.
Yeah, darling, I know you like CastBox. It gets distributed there too, and lots of other platforms as well.
And how much are we paying for this awesome service?
Absolutely nothing.
Coolio, so then we should tell people to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started?
Yep, do it now.
Okay, so I thought we would begin our discussion about abortion with Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
Because we
that's a great place to start.
I mean, yeah, that literally is the start.
I mean, I guess we could go back further to the times before Roe v. Wade when things were just like fucking horrible for women.
Well,
and,
yeah,
you know,
we could actually, but
that's going into like a too long of a podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
But just know that it was horrible, I guess.
Well, prior to Roe v. Wade, people were still getting abortions, but there wasn't a safe way to ensure that they could live through it.
Right. And they were doing them themselves sometimes, unsanitary conditions.
Quite often.
And it was just a bad time to be a woman when you couldn't, get medical treatment to get this done.
Right. Right. So Roe v. Wade was the beginning of, let's try to just, deal with the fact that this is going to happen one way or the other.
Civil society, you mean?
Civil society.
So,
go figure.
Interesting concept, isn't it?
Right. Where we, hope for the best for each other.
Right.
So Roe v. Wade, which we throw around the term as though we all know what it is.
Right.
It was a landmark decision of the Supreme Court, which was decided in 1973.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
And it states that the Constitution protects liberty to have an abortion without excessive government restriction.
I don't like to call myself old that much, but I'm pretty fucking old. Not old. Middle-aged, right? Mm-hmm. And this was done before we were even born.
No, this was only 2 years before I was born.
Right, but it was before we were born.
So we've had this protection.
For a long time.
Yeah, for all my life.
Right.
For all my life, we've had this protection.
I can tell you just from, people that I know in my life that went through this, they're very upset that this is happening because they fought for this,
Yeah, I mean, our parents and grandparents were the adults that made sure that this fucking protection was given to us.
Yeah.
And now it's being taken away from us.
Yeah.
And it's tragic and terrifying.
It is all that.
So Roe v. Wade struck down many U.S. and federal state abortion laws that were currently in place.
Yep.
And I'll get back to that in a minute further on. But the case, I only found out a year ago maybe that Roe wasn't even the name of the actual person in the case. It was a legal pseudonym that was given for her protection.
I think I had heard that at some point, but I wouldn't have recalled it if I was asked. So.
Her name was Norma McCorvey. And
gotcha.
She became pregnant in 1969 with her third child. Mm-hmm. And she wanted an abortion.
Okay.
But she lived in Texas where abortion was illegal and is now again illegal because they...
Essentially illegal.
Well, they are treating it as illegal.
Yeah.
Except in the case to save the mother's life. And even that is questionable now.
Yeah, and that, I mean, definitely now that is subjective to what people think about the situation, and it doesn't, like, there's just, it's all stupid.
Right, right. So what's interesting is that she was pregnant in 1969. The case was not decided till a few years later.
Right.
So by then she'd already had the kid,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine being that child, though? Like, wow.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that, honestly. Like,
yeah, I don't know either.
That's a hard one.
Right. I mean, I would just kind of maybe not mention it a lot.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right. Her attorneys were Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey.
Okay.
And they filed a lawsuit on her behalf in U.S. federal court against the local district attorney Henry Wade, alleging that Texas's abortion laws were unconstitutional.
Hence the Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. Got it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now we know the Roe, which
and
was
McCorvey,
and now we know the Wade, which was a dipshit.
Got it.
Okay.
I mean, he was from Texas.
So
no offense for anybody from Texas that's listening to us, because you guys are fucking awesome.
Right, but
record.
I have lived in Texas, and therefore I have the right to say that state is fucking trash.
Were you deep in the heart of Texas?
Well, I was in San Antonio. I don't know if it was deep in the heart, but I know that when I drive to Texas from Ohio, half the trip is getting to Texas, and then the other half is getting from the state border to San Antonio.
Right.
So it feels like maybe it's the asshole of Texas, if not the heart.
Got it. Okay.
So when they went to court, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas heard the case and ruled in her favor.
Okay.
But then Texas was like, oh, fucking hell no.
Right.
And so they booted it up directly to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not real familiar with legal proceedings, so that's why I'm assuming that others aren't as well.
Okay. Sure.
And I'm assuming that you weren't as well necessarily aware of how this shit works.
I am, but that's okay.
Oh, well, fuck off. Aren't you the smarty man?
Sorry.
But did you know that that's how it went?
Yeah.
Oh.
When somebody rules against you, that you move it up to the next court. And there's a consistent tier that you keep going up until you get to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court either accepts your case or denies your case. So.
And if it denies it, then it just goes with the last...
Goes with the last ruling.
Oh, yep. Well, okay then. I didn't know that. Not proud of that ignorance there, but it's nothing that ever personally impacted my daily life. So
right. I got you.
Yeah. Okay. I can't be the only one. I'm sure
you're not the only one. Yeah.
So, okay. The Supreme Court issued a 7-2 decision in McCorvey's favor.
Damn, that's a strong
hefty.
Opinion.
Keeping in mind that those were all dudes, right?
I think, yeah.
I'm pretty sure those were all dudes.
Yeah.
Ruling that the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, which I will get into also in a bit, provides a, quote, right to privacy, protecting a pregnant woman's right to choose whether to have an abortion.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize it was part of the 14th Amendment thing.
Right.
And I find that very interesting.
Yeah. No,
that's what's used to rule that.
Right.
Now, they also ruled along with this, and I hadn't heard this one. They also ruled that this right is not absolute. It must be balanced against the government's interests in protecting both the women's health and prenatal life.
Huh.
And so
that is interesting,
right?
Actually, because that doesn't really, I mean, I don't want it to come up, but that doesn't really come up. Like, I never heard that before just now.
Right.
So,
right.
That's interesting.
I found that interesting that they're like, you can do this, but.
But you could have, the ruling for that could have been referring to late stage abortions and stuff like that, like where you really, there needs to be a real viable reason to abort a baby that's almost being born.
Right.
Thing. You know, I mean, like that's.
It's a way of protecting the life of a child who is actually a child at that point,
right?
Versus the life of the mother.
But that's also what's allowed the specific states to get away with these differing laws that they have. The
heartbeat law in Ohio,
right? And they're just shy of being banning abortion, but they don't.
Yeah, exactly. So the court resolved that balance by tying state regulation of abortion to the three semesters. Good grief! What are we in college? The 3 trimesters of pregnancy.
Right.
So during the first trimester, governments could not prohibit abortions, period, the end.
Got it.
Okay? Under Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
First trimester, you're protected.
Got it.
You can get an abortion.
Right.
Okay? During the second trimester, governments could require reasonable health regulations. So
what does reasonable health regulations mean?
I'm gonna assume that they left it up to doctors to. You had to have a doctor's note, a reason why. You know, I think that it would have to be at that point. It had to be a medical reason, not just a, whatever. Or
it's still up to the state to decide what the medical reasons would be at that point.
Sure. I'm going to assume that with more liberal definitions, that doctors would go along with what you're saying, but that in red states, you had to have an exact medical reason for it.
Right.
Now, during the third trimester, abortions could be prohibited entirely so long as the laws contained exceptions for cases when they were absolutely necessary to save the life or health of the mother.
Sure. Yeah. I get that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a lot of beef with that setup.
Right.
I don't know what a better situation could be.
Sure. And honestly, look at how many women it has protected over these 50 years that it's been around.
Exactly.
It's a very vital piece of ruling that we've had in our courts that's been with us forever. Right. And this is just, I feel like we're going back to the dark ages.
With everything else that's happening with the right trying to get all mention of any kind of Black history removed from schools, and with book bannings, and with the attack on gay rights and trans kids.
It just never ends.
It feels like right now we are definitely at a boiling point where they're trying to take us back to the 1800s.
Well, and I just feel like nobody's angry enough right now. Like, I see it on Twitter. Twitter is angry, right?
Sure.
But I don't feel the anger. I don't feel the anger out in society.
What's really frustrating to me is, like, on Twitter, everybody is like, tie your shoes and get outside and shout. Yeah. Right? And I'm like right there. And then I go to Facebook and like everybody's posting pictures of their kids and their front yard and, I spilled my coffee this morning. Isn't that hilarious?
Well, and even when you turn on the news, it's very mundane. Not like they're not screaming about this. They're just reporting it. And it's like, I get it. It's news, but it's just.
I don't understand why I'm not seeing more panic.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm panicked. When this first happened, I think I mentioned that I stayed up the whole night crying and shaking, and I was just.
Well, that's in large part why we're talking about this right now, because it is something that we feel very strongly about.
Right.
So.
Right. I don't understand the lack of panic.
Right.
I guess is what it comes down to.
Completely agree.
So the court classified the right to choose to have an abortion as fundamental. Okay. Yeah. In quotes, fundamental, which requires courts to evaluate challenged abortion laws under the, quote, strict scrutiny standard.
I don't know what that is.
It's the highest level of judicial review in the United States.
Still don't know what that is, but okay.
It's
essentially you got to have a real fucking good reason to not.
Yes. It has to be open to the public, and it has to, like, you have to have all your T's crossed and all your I's dotted, and you need to know what the fuck you're talking about.
Got it.
So that's the end of that section, Roe v. Wade. But there was a modification to that, which I didn't know about, quite honestly.
Okay.
SCOTUS revisited and modified Roe's legal rulings in the 1992 decision. Okay. 1992.
Yeah.
That's a year before I graduated from high school.
Right.
Okay. Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Had you even heard of that?
No.
I had not either.
Yeah.
The court reaffirmed Roe's holding that a woman's right to choose to have an abortion is constitutionally protected.
Okay.
But they abandoned Roe's trimester framework in favor of a standard based on fetal viability.
Fetal viability?
If a baby can live outside the mother's womb, then it is considered viable.
Got it.
And they overruled the, quote, strict scrutiny standard for reviewing abortion restrictions.
So they made it easier to get rid of Roe v. Wade, basically.
Yeah, like, it doesn't specifically tell me one way or the other, is this good or bad? It feels bad, though.
Well, it's bad because that's I think that probably right there is probably what's allowed a lot of the states to pass the laws that they have
the heartbeat
in the
bills.
last 20 years.
Right.
Or whatever,
Instead of saying your first trimester is protected,
right.
Now they can say so many weeks is where it's viable. And they keep pushing that so many weeks back till it's like -3 before you had sex.
Right,
like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so from there, let's go into the 14th Amendment.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Sure.
So the 14th Amendment was adopted on July 9th, 1868. Whew. And it had to do with the Reconstruction Amendments.
Okay.
So, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
And it is often considered one of the most consequential amendments and is the one that is most argued in court.
Gotcha.
So it is fucking importante.
Yeah.
It addresses citizenship rights and equal protection under the law.
Okay.
And was proposed in response to issues related to former slaves following the American Civil War.
Got it.
Prior to that, slaves and previous slaves and freed slaves and escaped slaves were not considered citizens.
Okay. Yep.
Which we know in the Constitution prior to that, they weren't even considered fully human.
Right.
Which is just grotesque.
Yep.
And the amendment is one of the most litigated parts of the Constitution, forming basis for landmark Supreme Court decisions such as, and I have a brief list here that I found interesting.
Okay.
So early on, it nullified the SCOTUS decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford in 1857, which had held that Americans descended from African slaves could not be citizens, not just weren't citizens, but could not be citizens of the United States.
Got it.
So it nullified that.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it was used in the decisions for, in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education regarding racial segregation.
Yeah.
1973, Roe v. Wade regarding abortion.
Okay.
In 2000, Bush v. Gore.
Really?
Regarding the 2000 presidential election.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And then in 2015... the Obergefell versus Hodges regarding same-sex marriage.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
It makes sense. I for whatever reason, I didn't realize it fell under the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. The amendment limits the actions of all state and local officials and also those acting on behalf of such officials.
Gotcha.
So it's a pretty healthy amendment.
Yeah.
And needs to be put in gold, maybe?
Right.
So
let's solidify this one as just we need this. Yeah.
Like that. It's an amendment, but
there shall be no repeal of this shit.
Yeah. Let's make sure that it's a good one. It stays there.
Yeah.
So that's the end of our little history lesson, just to give us both a little background that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that I don't know if you knew a lot of that, but.
And from here, I think we're going to go and talk about the
leak.
The leak and the stuff that's going on currently.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be for everybody.
It's not.
We kind of teased you guys a little long here, so.
Yeah, sorry.
But this is a Patreon, and we put it in the title, so you go sign up for Patreon.
Go sign up for Patreon, you guys. It's a good choice.
Yeah. All right. So if you're a Patreon member, we'll see you guys in a second.
And if you're not, I hope we'll see you soon anyway.
Right.
Oh no! What happened?
Well, this is a special Patreon episode, actually. Which means that they need to go to Patreon and subscribe as a patron in order to listen to it.
Okay, well, I guess that we are going to go do that now.
Yeah, just head over to patreon.com/sacrilegious discourse, become a member for as low as $2 a month, and you'll have access to all these special things and goodies too. So, go do that.
So this was just a teaser.
Yeah, teaser.
Okay, just
Bye.
checking.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.